the USPTO has made such great strides in supporting women entrepreneurs and a lot of initiatives. Steve, please, I'd love for you to first introduce yourself and share, yeah, just a little bit about you, and then I'd love just to have a conversation.
Well, sure, and thank you for that, David, and good afternoon or good morning to our friends in Hawaii who are joining. Good to see all of you, and uh, jotting down some notes about your background and what you were interested in. And there was a couple of themes that seemed to emerge. So hopefully we can talk through that. But just by way of background and introduction, I'm Steve Koziel. I work for the United States Patent and Trademark Office. For those who don't know, we are the federal agency within the United States that receives and examines patent applications and issues U.S. patents. And likewise for trademarks, we process trademark registrations at the federal level for the United States. And we're also the principal advisor to the administration on all things intellectual property, including trademarks, copyrights, patents, and trade secrets. So while there is also a United States Copyright Office that's within the Library of Congress, we collaborate with them to provide advice on all things IP for the administration. So my background is more on the patent side. I'm an electrical engineer by training, and spent time working as a patent examiner and managing teams within the patent office. But as my colleague Ken Takeda mentioned, our focus here, and maybe for the purposes of this discussion, is on connecting folks like yourselves, right, who are current users or potential users of the intellectual property system in the US, with some of the available resources to aid you throughout that process. Because if you're not familiar with IP, or if you're tangentially familiar with the process of actually filing a patent application or even a trademark application, there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot of people who may not be looking out for your best interest as you're going through that process. So if nothing else, by the end of our conversation today, I hope to better elucidate some of the available options that the USPTO has either come up with organically or partnered with other folks to help make available to people in your situation, to get them the resources that they need to make the right decision for them and their business, to help them find the funding that they need to get their business starting, and to better understand the role of intellectual property in getting that funding, or in succeeding with your business. So there's a lot that's out there. There's a lot that we can spend our time on. But maybe right off the bat, there's one initiative in particular I'd like to highlight for the group, unless David, you had a different thought in mind or wanted to maybe open it up for questions, since it is a relatively small group. I certainly encourage folks to either type their questions in the chat, or to just simply come off of mute and ask whatever questions you all may have. More than happy to keep this interactive and dynamic as we go through the process.
Thank you, Steve. And please continue with that thought. I do have a list of questions and some things I want to talk about, and I'm sure the people in attendance live do as well. But please continue with what you were going to share. Just because I've seen so much like transformation with the USPTO, where I feel like people that might have experienced 5-6 years ago, even the website, right? There's just so many new tools. So anyway, that was some stuff I wanted to float to the top, and it seemed like you were going there. So
absolutely, and you're spot on, David, that there's a lot on our website, and sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming to navigate. So I did want to call a few different initiatives to the attention of this group, because and one in particular that I think really tries to get to the heart of that nexus between intellectual property and funding. And I'm going to be sharing a few links in the chat here. So hopefully you all have access to that. If not, I'll share all of these links with David, and we can make sure that we circulate them to this group. But if you're able to access the chat, I'll be adding a few links as I talk through them. One of the initiatives that our current Undersecretary of Commerce and the Director of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, Kathy Badal, has started just fairly recently is a series specifically focusing on women entrepreneurs. And to that end, we're looking to host these what we're calling We Wednesdays. We being the abbreviation for women entrepreneurs, and so once a month typically on a Wednesday in the middle of the month, we'll have a program featuring success stories from folks that have either been in your position or have come through the entrepreneurship process, started a company, and have used intellectual property at some point to aid their success. And we really want to hear from them and use that as a means to help and kind of spread the word about strategies for navigating intellectual property when you're trying to get funding, when you're trying to start a business, when and better understanding how to integrate the IP piece into a business plan and wrap funding around that. So the We Wednesday initiative is something that I would highly recommend interested folks to take a look at. We're doing the next event is next Wednesday. It'll be a hybrid event, so it'll be in person in the Phoenix, Arizona. But we're also streaming it live, and we're also recording the stream as well. So if you're not able to tune in live, you can certainly watch the recording. And I think that's it's meant to be a place where and I really loved the comments that our friend from downtown LA said about focusing on funding for those that may not be the traditional recipients of venture capital funding or angel investor funding. So that's certainly part of the conversation we're looking to have. And the date will be next Wednesday, February 22nd, for the discussion on funding sources. So we're going to be taking a look at funding both at the federal level, as well as some of the creative solutions from private markets that our entrepreneurs have come up with and utilized to their success. So both in kind of getting into some of the weeds about the risks of dilutive versus non-dilutive funding and what questions to ask even before going into that process. So and I think that really is up there, and one of the top questions we get is funding. What do I need to know before I go talk to a VC or even put my pitch together, and just what's out there, right? What's aside from the the traditional VC routes, what are some of the less obvious sources of funding, not just at the federal, state, and local level, but from those that have been through the process and are successful, how did they do it? How did they navigate it? And starting with funding is where we'd like to begin that conversation next week, Wednesday. So really want to put a plug out for the Women's Entrepreneurship Symposium. And again, if you're not able to register, don't worry about that. We can send you a link to the recording. But if you are, we encourage you to check that out. A couple of other things I'll just throw out there for the good of the group before we get into any specifics. So as David kind of alluded to, the USPTO does a fair amount of public programming, specifically for the entrepreneurship community and for those that may be new to intellectual property. So the next link I'll put in the chat here is just the list of upcoming events that are hosted by the USPTO. And I'd encourage you, there's a note of caution, there is a lot that we do quite a few events almost every calendar day of the year. At least on average, we have something that is accessible to the public. But I would encourage you to kind of browse the next month or so worth of offering out of the USPTO and see what kind of programming we have that may be of interest to you all, and see about registering, or if nothing else, at least signing up for the distribution list and newsletter that we have for you to become aware of upcoming programming that may be relevant or of interest. A few things to highlight. In the introduction, someone had mentioned that they'd recently filed a provisional patent application, and a couple others have mentioned that they've been through the process and have their issued patents. But we have a quarterly series that we call Path to a Patent, where we assume no prior knowledge of the patent system or how to even file for a patent application. But we assume you've got an idea and you want to know what to do with it and where to take it and what some of the next steps might be and what are some of the free publicly available resources that are out there as you're thinking about what next steps are right for you. So our Path to a Patent series breaks down that entire process from how do you even identify what you have and what type of intellectual property is right for you. Because some people new to the system sometimes use patent, trademark, copyright interchangeably, or they're not really sure what might be appropriate for a trade secret versus a patent versus a copyright. So if nothing else, we meet you where you are at that initial stage, help you understand what it is that you have, and then work with you to identify, okay, these are the tools. If you do have something that maybe is more appropriate for a trademark, these are the tools and the next steps that you can take to register that trademark. If you do have an invention that may be eligible for a patent, these are some of the next steps you can take for that. And so that's our quarterly Path to a Patent series that we encourage folks to register for. Not everyone may have the time to do that, or the inclination to sit through a classroom style discussion of that. So the third link that I'll put in the chat here for everyone is a more self-directed approach to what I just described, and it's a link to our intellectual property identifier tool. This is a web-based tool, so nothing to sign up for, nothing to register for, but it's a self-directed way to walk you through and to get you thinking about what types of intellectual property that you may have that may benefit from either federal registration or some enhanced protection in the case of a trade secret. So the IP identifier tool is something that we recommend even folks that have been through the process of filing a provisional patent or a trademark or copywriting some of their work. We do recommend people to just go through the exercise and get them thinking about what they have that may be of value or potential future value to their company that they can take steps to protect today. And the neat thing about the intellectual property identifier tool is that you go through the exercise, like I said, self-directed. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes to go through all of the questions. And then when you come out of that, it'll provide a series of links to various kind of resources for next steps that you can take. So for example, if you come out of the tool and you realize, oh wait, I've got a handful of trademarks that I may be able to register for, it'll provide you with a link to the site on how to register for the trademark. It'll provide you with guidance on upcoming training that the office may have that you can register for if you're looking for a guide on how to actually use the website and get your trademark registered. And other free legal resources that may be available in your state or local region to get you connected into the local intellectual property community as well. So it's a great tool. Again, web-based. Do it on your own time. Recommend that folks check that out. And maybe the last link that I'll share for everyone's awareness is a link to our inventor and entrepreneur resources page. So again, David mentions there's a lot of stuff on the USPTO website, and frankly, sometimes it can be challenging to navigate or to know what it is that you're even looking for at times. So in order to simplify that, we've kind of made a one-stop page for specifically targeting inventors, entrepreneurs, whether you're new to the process or whether you've been through it before a few times. The inventor and entrepreneur resource page is the place where you can see the full suite of USPTO resources, from training to presentation material to upcoming programs and symposia that we put for entrepreneurs, all kind of in one place, and should help you. If you don't know where to start, that's a great place to start in navigating the publicly available resources from USPTO. So that's a lot, and maybe I'll pause here and see what questions that raises, or if there's an opportunity to get specific and dive in any of these particular issues, or see what questions the group has at this point.
Sure. Thank you for all that. And that was good. I'd love to open up to questions. I mean, David's made some good points in the chat, and feel free to unmute, David, if you want to talk about it. But right, it's kind of like, how much time and money am I going to spend before I even know I have a viable idea? Are there mentors that can support me? I mean, I know, Karen, you work with a lot of small companies. We're talking about women too, and people that are just underrepresented in general may not have access to some of the early money. How can we support them, I guess, is the question. So yeah, no, these are all good. David or Karen, did you guys want to comment, or Michelle?
Was your question on how we can support women?
Well, in other words, if I'm a woman, I have an idea, right? I don't want, maybe I got to be careful. When do I want to share that? I can go to the USPTO website, do it yourself for a certain level or to a certain extent, but then before I even speak to Karen, they may not know you like I know you, and, want to share that information, right?
Well, often, David, I find that entrepreneurs, not just women entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs in general, often don't know where to start. And so I think, though, that as a good starting point, of course, is what Steve just outlined, which is doing research on the various links that he provided. But I often think that before one can even start, you really need to have a strategy of where you're going. And on that, I'm actually going to defer to David Kalo, and because that sort of is his focus area on, what is the strategy, and I'll often talk to women entrepreneurs about this. Where do you want to go? At what point do you want to start? And the strategy has to come first. And then I think you dig into the details that Steve just outlined, which are critical. But David, I wonder if you want to comment on that rather than me taking a crack at it, because this is your area of expertise.
I don't know whether I'm successfully speaking here. Karen, can you hear me?
You are.
Yes, we can hear you.
I have spent a lot of time trying to architect castles, not build castles, to protect the treasure, and trying to think about what do you as a person need to know about medicine before you go to the doctor, about diet, exercise, and symptoms to watch out for. And what does the CEO, entrepreneur, and for that matter, venture capitalists need to know before they go hire a specialty lawyer to go do their mysterious and weird and expensive stuff. And right now, the best answer I have is 20 questions meant to be a universal framework of think about these 20 things, and then you can make better decisions with the experts. And we're trying to get that up and published. And there's a short piece on LinkedIn, which has the 5 most important, called Diligence in a New York Minute, which is the 5 key questions, in my view, you need to start thinking about. That's the first 5. The 10 I'll talk about here is to make a simple chart: patent, trademark, copyright, trade secret, licensing by attack and defense, a 5x2 matrix, and split up whatever your budget is, and I'll talk about that in a sec, among those 10 buckets in discussion with your scientists, your business people, your lawyers, so that you're choosing to spend, I don't know, you have a $100,000 startup budget, maybe you want to spend about 10,000 of that on IP, but pick that number. I don't know whether it's 5 or 10 or 20%, depends on the business, but start with the budget, because I can assure you, as a former regular lawyer, we can spend all the money you have and then some. And so if you just say, how can you protect me? I can protect you right into the grave. And you've got to say, I've got $10,000 or $1,000 or $100. What's the most you can do for me in terms of searching and watching out for people who consume me? And then knowing that I'm going to get copied, I'm going to get accused of copying if I succeed. If you're betting on failure, life's easy, you don't need IP. If you would like to have a chance of succeeding and saying to the venture capitalist, I can repay your investment because I wasn't killed by the copying and the accusations of copying, you have to spend a rational amount of money in a rational set of ways. And it's not all patent applications, and it's not all trade secret precautions, not all one thing. It's the moat and the walls and the foot soldiers and the cavalry in the castle, and it's the north, south, east, west. And if you don't think about it that way, you're missing out. That's the best I got to offer in a nutshell.
Yeah, Steve, what do you think about this?
No, and David raises some great points there too. And one way to think about it for newer companies is, what do I have that's valuable, and what happens when someone tries to copy me? And what recourse, what would that do to the company if a core feature of my core product was unprotected or hit the market without any type of protection? Would that sink this company? Would that sink this venture? And then kind of think backwards from there of, okay, how then do I protect that product, that feature, that service that I'm providing? And the answer isn't always just, well, I have a patent, or I filed my patent application, I've checked the box, I'm done. To David's point, that moat is so important, and that moat is often more than just filing one patent application, right? It's usually a portfolio of patent applications that you may file, of trade secrets that you keep. that kind of surround and protect those patent applications. There's the, of course, the brand identity that you're looking to create, and how trademark protection can support the uniqueness of that brand identity. And then there's also the international considerations as well that I think are critically important. I think someone may have mentioned that earlier. How do I think about, what was it, Donna, maybe, that talked about, international IP, and for those jurisdictions that may not respect IP, or at least historically haven't respected IP to the same degree that the United States has. Because even though you may say, well, I'm a U.S. company, I'm going to sell in the U.S. and North America, but where are you manufacturing, right? What is the full supply chain look like of your product? And you need to be aware of the potential for IP theft occurring outside of the U.S. Because all of these forms of IP that we're talking about, a U.S. patent only protects you within the United States, and like vice versa for international applications, right? There's no such thing as a worldwide trademark or a worldwide patent. So you need to ask yourself, and part of that strategy and decision-making process, and how do I allocate this budget, is where am I going to be selling? And where am I going to be manufacturing this? And how am I going to protect myself if somebody rips me off, either during the manufacturing process or in one of my key markets? And we often see companies work backwards from that into saying, okay, well, if it's Europe and North America and Southeast Asia, I know I need to look into my intellectual property positioning in those jurisdictions, and then that kind of determines how the budget gets allocated. So I think that right off the bat is a key question to ask. Where am I selling this, or where am I looking to derive the lion's share of my revenue from this product? To what does the full supply chain look like in terms of where it's going to be manufactured, assembled, designed, and ultimately imported or exported, and kind of work backwards from there.
Yeah, so this is Donna, and thank you, Steve, and Karen and David. So to give some context, so I was a top 5% employee at Cisco Systems, and then Whitty had actually introduced me, and I was one of 4 external women that was an advisor to the highest levels at Walmart for many years. So I actually did grad studies in Singapore, and we had semesters in 8 countries, including China and India. And I directly witnessed Huawei copying Cisco in weeks, what took us years to innovate at Cisco. So I know like the reality of it. And my grad school classmates, they said to me, Donna, we can copy this so quickly. Why doesn't the US do anything about it? And I said, well, I'm not sure we know what to do, right? So I took a lot of time to reflect on that. The best idea that I could come up with was to have a structure like they do in Japan, where you have a variety of different companies and you're working together. I mean, in the US, we typically didn't do that because we thought it was hurting entrepreneurs, but if there's a way that we can do it and it help entrepreneurs. And so I guess my question to the US Patent Office is, can you be my witness and also my coach to get those T's and C's with Apple and Amazon? Because I know that I need their expertise to be successful globally, right? And I fixed hearing loss, and I also have been a successful tech entrepreneur and tech Fortune 100 leader. But I also am very humble because I know what the realities are. And so what I'm looking for are those, the government support, and can that government, be with me in the communications with Apple and Amazon. And I ask this question, not only for me, but also for other entrepreneurs. There's a QSBS 1202, which is typically a private investor, which is a really great structure that the US government has, but it's typically for investors, not corporations. So, I mean, the feedback I've given to government leaders is, hey, this is really good. can we expand this to corporations so that there is we have less anti-competitive and more support for entrepreneurs, and really to be able to compete globally.
That's fantastic, Don, and thank you for sharing that and that providing that context. And it's a fascinating background. And I've got a lot of maybe more questions I have for you than I'm able to answer. But it does kind of highlight some of the differences in national approaches, right? To take China as an example, right? They have their Made in China by 2025 initiative, and they have like state-directed policy, specifically around, incentivizing, companies to file IP, and it's we don't quite have that level of top-down coordination around intellectual property. It's more about giving individual companies, entrepreneurs, startups the knowledge and tools that they need to to make the best and reasonably informed decisions that they can make, and availing themselves of these tools to put them in that position to succeed, in that position to compete. And one thing, specifically around building an international strategy, I'll put another link in the chat for everyone, a link to what we call our China intellectual property toolkit as well. And I would again encourage folks to browse this. It's not really a how-to document. It's more of a higher level, things to consider as you're thinking about expanding your footprint internationally, and just getting realistic about where you're going to be competing. And it kind of walks you through, at a relatively high level, but with enough detail and sophistication to hopefully point you to some concrete answers around, realistically, what's it like to have a Chinese patent and to try to enforce that in China? What is, you can have a trademark in the US, you can have a similar trademark in China, but there are, very different regimes when it comes to enforcing them, what they cover, and there's that famous example of the Michael Jordan, the Jumpman trademark that he secured the rights to that in the United States, but in China they have a different system, and so he had to go through a lengthy process to kind of get the rights to his own image in China, because someone was squatting on that mark. So it's a great point, and it's not something that we can dive into, and I certainly open that up to the rest of the group as well, if they have specific challenges that they faced approaching the international question and protecting themselves internationally, and what they've found to be helpful. Or specific challenges that they've come across as well. But in the meantime, the China IPR Road toolkit is available, and kind of a good one-stop shop for for reference material prior to reaching out to an attorney overseas.
And Steve, if I could ask something that came up in my head for that, somebody like Donna that may be dealing with an Apple and or an Amazon, is there specific coaching from the USPTO or somebody that because she's, it's the David versus Goliath type thing. Is there, right, Donna? I mean, I think this would be valuable to know. You can't pay, attorneys, but getting right from the source might be helpful, I'd imagine.
Yes, that's exactly. It is definitely a David versus Goliath, and the Apple and the Amazon are the big Goliath, and then China is an even bigger Goliath, right? So yeah, right. You're right. And I apologize. I'm in my PJs because I have food poisoning. So I know David asked me to put the video on. I'm like, No, David, I'm just
That's
here.
right.
I'm happy I'm here.
That's the way I could bring you on stage, so it's all good. It's all good, Donna.
It's that Super Bowl food, right? Really
Yeah,
good for you.
exactly.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Yeah, so Steve, like with the We programs, I looked at the list of events that are amazing. You know, we love having you guys here too, you know, as we have more and more of our members that we want to give to support to, and you know, just be more of in an intimate environment where they can ask questions. You know, once they do get that, you know, where they might be going up against one of these ginormous companies, are there mentoring programs or things like that that might happen through USPTO, or should we just take that on through Witty? Yeah, just any insights, that would be great.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that, and it's a great suggestion, Donna, to to take a more active role in providing that mentoring, because and we're the hesitation that from the USPTO side is that we're not in a position to provide formal legal advice for startups, right? So we have certain restrictions in kind of answering the what should I do questions. We're more of the what can I do, make me aware of the options, the resources, and what's out there. So we kind of answer the what's available rather than the what should I do. So but that's where these types of collaborations, whether it's with Witty or other partnerships, may make a lot of sense, where USPTO can provide a lot of the basic know-how, a lot of the nuts and bolts training about, okay, what do I have, how do I protect it, and what's available for me. And then through some type of collaboration with Witty or Donna, if you have thoughts on what that structure might look like to kind of serve as maybe more of a matchmaker, where if you're a new entrepreneur and you want to get connected, to someone in your region or to someone who's been through the process, we may be able to support a structure like that serves as more of a clearinghouse matchmaking role, that effectively kind of shields us from being in a position to provide formal legal advice, which we cannot do, to instead facilitating collaborations and the that kind of connection. So.
Yeah, I would love it if
I love that.
I would love it if the USPTO could give some matchmaking dollars to someone like a Jeff Ainsley. I'm sorry, Jeff Ashley. So Jeff Ashley worked for the DOJ for 2 years, and he's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so, I mean, I've met with Jeff, and I've kind of, I've showed him, hey, Jeff, here's when I had hearing loss. Here's when I fixed hearing loss. Here's my I was elected president at NUS, and here's the references from Cisco and Salesforce, but it's always then the question of, okay, well, who funds Jeff, right? So he is a lawyer. And so, yeah, if the USPTO can, has some dollars to help me work with Jeff to work with Apple and Amazon, that's helpful. Or if the USPTO, I'm absolutely in favor of, can we do this? So, I mean, really it's to also help Apple and Amazon be successful globally. So yes, I want a return on the investment for the 22 years of research and development and the innovations and the courage and the teamwork that I've done over the last 22 years. But I also, what I'm trying to do is put that customer value out there and be rewarded for it, right? So that we continue to add more value, more value, more value. And so, yeah, no, definitely matchmaking. And by all means, if you want to, ping me and can let me know what the options are, I would love it. That would be fantastic.
No, I love that, and thank you for sharing that with the group, Donna, and maybe we'll kind of take that and see what we can do with it, because I think that is a critical missing piece, right? Is how do I find people that have been successful, and we try to host programs that highlight successful entrepreneurs, and that's part of where the We Wednesday initiative is coming in. But it's one thing to sign up and watch a program online, and another thing entirely to have that one-on-one type discussion with someone who's had success. So I think we flagged something that's missing out there in the community, and I love the thoughts around that. So.
And there are new, the US is finally bringing back the chip manufacturing, or bringing back more chip manufacturing. And so, Apple's announced a big chip manufacturing in Arizona. So it's fantastic that you have that event coming up in Arizona, because I'm sure, there's other entrepreneurs that have innovations that are going to be tied to that as well.
Yeah, Taiwan Semiconductors coming to Arizona. And I think,
yes,
right, so there's a lot of these opportunities. And I think that's why we're having this monthly community too, right? How can we tap into many of our members, the Hall of Famers, the Heidi Roisens, the Karen Cohns,
yes,
the Lisa Seacats. David, I think you're speaking in a couple of months. I don't know if we've confirmed that yet, but I'm volunteering you. Right. And I think this person you mentioned, Donna, in Dallas, let's get them hooked up and at least start a conversation. Because I think, the more we can kind of, bring the stuff in with groups, and then a lot of in the vertical spaces too. My friend, I just thought of it as you were talking, but my friend, Mike Hogan, who was the architect of OS2 and now kind of is an expert witness on chip cases, he'd be a great one to bring in for any semiconductor stuff people are working on. And
absolutely. And you're 100% right. Woody's been very valuable. Heidi Rosen said, Donna, Apple's gonna, crash your value down. I'm like, oh crap, we got to figure out how to bring it up, right? So bring it up and scale it globally, right? And Gwen Shotwell has been fantastic as well, and met her through Woody as well. So no, 100%. So it's just like, when Heidi gives you the realities of what you're going to face with negotiating those T's and C's, you don't want deer in the headlights where you're kind of stalled. What you want to do is figure out, okay, who's that mentor to get you to go on the expressway and, scrap the tolls kind of thing.
Totally. Awesome. Thank you for that. We're about to hit the 5-minute mark, so I would love to see if anybody has anything else, questions, or like to share anything or any insights.
And if there were questions in the chat that we missed, do feel free to unmute and raise them. Otherwise, we can certainly follow up one-on-one. And I'm just scrolling through some of the messages that I'm seeing.
And how are those events, by the way, Steve? I did see it was kind of as far as the panel goes for next week. There's somebody from, looks like maybe the local office of the USPTO, somebody from, I thought I saw like a startup community in Arizona. Is it like interactive events, or is it right? Like, yeah,
so
sure.
It's one way to think of it is more of kind of a lunch and learn. So we've got the head of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. We've got the local head of some of the local startup groups in Phoenix, as well as some of the entrepreneurs themselves that have availed themselves of some of the local startup resources. So it really is to create a space for the startups to talk about what made the difference for them, when they didn't know where to turn, or when they weren't sure how to think about funding, how to think about rolling IP into their funding. Who did they turn to? What questions did they ask themselves? And basically, what do they wish they could tell their past selves, when they were just starting out and just looking for funding? So that's really it's kind of like it's not quite a TED Talk level, but it's kind of, think of it as sort of everyone gets their mini TED Talk of what they would tell their past self when they were just starting out. And specifically next Wednesday is funding. That's really the focus there, and how IP ties into that. So, and I will put out a plug as we are coming to the end of our time together. If you're looking at that, if you're looking at our upcoming events that we have at the PTO, and you say, yeah, this is all fine, but what I really need is X, Y, Z. Like the great, Donna's great example about I need that one-on-one mentoring connection, or I need a network that I can plug into and say, okay, I have these needs, and I need to be connected to somebody that can support me in that. That's what we're here for as well, is to hear what you all need that you're not getting yet out of the PTO, or ways that Witty and the PTO may be able to collaborate to provide a program that would more directly address the needs that you all have. I've gotten a lot of ideas just from the conversation today about the kind of the David and Goliath approach, or how does the little guy compete, and how do you do that internationally. So we're here. That's my job, and Ken Takeda, who's online as well. So you can send us any ideas that you all have for future programming, for future suggestions of things that you'd like to see that maybe you don't see out of the PTO as well. So happy to work with you all and take your suggestions.
Thank you, Steve. I love that. And Dr. Janice, as far as your question goes, maybe it is cross-pollinating our partnership with the USPTO and maybe like our Web3 community or our semiconductor one, so we can maybe dig down more specifically in some of those meetings. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop recording.